Well, thank you very much for having me. Let's hope there are no hiccups with the connection. It's right now almost 9 p.m. on Rapa Nui, and my presentation is called The Forgotten Names, Rapa Nui People Doing Archaeological Fieldwork between 1914 and 1960. Identification of indigenous Rapa Nui in old photographs from archaeological expeditions. This is a very impressive picture. The first one, it's a photograph taken in 1916, apparently by Henry Percival Edmonds. It's a photo in which one of the Moai from Rapa Nui is being taken away. It's being taken from an unknown region of the island all the way to the cargo port of Hangapico in order to be taken by the Carnegie, a ship that was going around the world. And in 1916, December of 1916, called by Rapa Nui. So there's a group of celebrities for the island. Like each and every single one of those persons in the photo is a celebrity for the Rapa Nui people. Maybe the newer generations don't know them immediately by face, but they know if you tell them who they are, they will know their names and they will know their history, right? So, okay, I will tell you very quickly a little bit of the work I've been doing. So I'll be moving slides. I'm not sure at which point they will change for you, but I hope it's not that much of a gap, right? So the identification of Rapa Nui people is very important because our island, Rapa Nui, had a huge population bottleneck in the late 19th century. In the decade of the 1880s, there's a census that was made here that counted only 156 people, including the person taking the census, Ari Ipaea, Alexander Salmon, who was the manager of the sheep company of the Brander, Maison Brander here on Rapa Nui. And 156 people and only 36 families. So 36 couples that would have descendants from that. So that means that by the early 20th century, with a slow population growth, there would be only 200 and something, 200 plus people. And I've been trying to identify every single person by name, right, to know exactly which person is, overall in all sorts of different photographs that we have from the time. But now we will focus more on the archaeological part. I have to mention that this is a work that's only possible now thanks to what Dr. Grant McCall did in the 1970s and early 1980s, working with Victoria Rapahango for the most part, but also with Jose Fati, Leon Tuki, and a few other Rapa Nui who were very young at this time and were able to identify faces, identify names in photographs that Grant McCall found at the Bishop Museum in Hawaii. He brought copies, showed them to his colleagues, collaborators here on this island, and was able to identify lots of people. Of course, not everyone. So I'm trying to work on top of what Grant did, doing many other things, finding other archives, trying to get as many photographs of people from Rapa Nui, especially in these early years. So I have, of course, these databases that I have generated. I have some, like most of these, I have copies, even though some are in very low resolution and would love to have higher resolution of them. And of some of them, some photographs are lost or impossible to get. So if any of you can help, that would be great. One day, send me an email and we can continue with that work. So I've been working a lot with captions that have been found in some of the archives. For example, on the left side, you can see a caption that was written by Henry Percival Edmonds after a photograph that he took, or maybe one of the colleagues or friends of Henry Percival Edmonds that wrote a caption based off what Henry Percival Edmonds told. Yeah, Edmonds was the first photographer on this island that lived on this island, so he has plenty of photographs of people, as well as photographs of other things, archaeological sites and everything. Then I've been working a lot with census. There are many different censuses, especially Vives Solar census is very interesting because it tells about the profession and what people were doing for a living. So if you see someone that's dressed in a certain way as for example, a mutoi, a guard for the government institutions that were established here on the island in 1914, you immediately know and narrow down the possibilities of, okay, this person, who is this person with that uniform? Okay, it must be one of these 6 or 7 people that were hired to do that thing in 1914. Then we have other censuses like Bienvenido de Estela, below, that talks about the households and who lived in which house. We have plenty of group pictures outside of a house, and this has been very, very useful to identify, especially children and other elderly people that maybe Grand McCall's, let's say, collaborators did not identify or did not remember very well. Then we have other archives like the Museo Nacional de Historia Natural in Chile that has a few people that were not clearly identified in previous work, and obviously some captions from old magazines in Chile, like the ones you see below, in which we have partial identifications. Like most of them have not identified at all anyone. They just say, at most they say an Easter Islander dancing, or they say a group of Polynesians or a group of Kanakas or something like that. But well, there are a few of them in which there's some indication of whom they might be. So we've been using that as well, and huge amounts of cross references, right? So we're using McCall's work with the other things, the other pieces of evidence we have, to start cross-referencing faces. In some cases, you see a picture that has, I don't know, 6 years of difference from one of the pictures that has Victoria Arapajango's identifications. 6 years don't seem much if someone's, I don't know, 30 and then 36 in the next one, but it's a huge difference if someone is 12 in one in the early picture and 18 in the second picture. The face changes a lot. So it's a little bit complicated to identify people who were identified as children by Victoria Arapajango, and later you have another picture where they might be, but you need to be able to do this extreme work of narrowing down who they might be and so on. And the huge family tree that I have amassed for maybe 7 years, also starting with lots of work that has been done previously by the Mauhatu o Rapa Nui, the Council of Elders of the island. But well, building upon that, I've been able to do a family tree with almost 6,000 people. Well, starting from those 156, well, going a little bit back, but also going towards our time, well, about almost 6,000 people and 2,135 families. So quick summary, we'll start with the Mana expedition. Why the Mana expedition? Because previous expeditions don't have pictures, don't have photographs of Rapa Nui carrying out archaeological work. We do have much earlier photographs than this. We do have earlier photographs of people than this on Rapa Nui, but we don't have photographs of people doing archaeological work before this. So we start with the Mana expedition that was led by Catherine Routledge and her husband, William Scoresby Routledge. They spent almost 17 months on Rapa Nui. This is a picture of the base camp in Rano Raraku, where they spent several weeks working and doing, well, lots of field work and taking also lots of photographs. So this is a photograph that was not published by Routledge, but that you can find in the archives of the British Museum, for example, and in other sources online, maybe even Wikimedia Commons. It's a photograph of Ahu Tongariki, one of the biggest monuments of the island, if not the biggest monument of the island, with 15 moai. This is a close-up picture of 2 of the greatest moai of this Ahu. And in this one, you can see 2 men And these two men, we have been able to identify them. Of course, one of them is pretty obvious, Juan Tepan Orano, the translator of Catherine Routledge and also the closest collaborator of Catherine Routledge during her stay. Juan Tepan Orano, who worked with Catherine also collecting legends and all sorts of traditional history. And that in turn made Juan Tepano a very, very respected, wise person that had amassed huge amounts of knowledge and would later be a reference for everybody else in future years here on Rapa Nui. And the other pictures of Antonio Haoa Pacomio. Antonio Haoa, it's very important that we have pictures of him because he left descendants. He had 4 children with Parapina Araki Bornia. But Antonio Haoa passed away in 1918 during an epidemic of an influenza epidemic in 1918 in which many Rapa Nui died. So Antonio Haoa passed away that year. So we don't have many pictures of him, and we don't have pictures of him after this. We know about Juan Tepano becoming this respected elder, but about Antonio Haoa, what would have happened had he not died during the influenza epidemic? Maybe he would have also become another important reference for the Rapa Nui in the future. Then we have, more photographs from Routledge's expedition, Mana expedition. Again, Antonio Haoa working here. Routledge says that Antonio, she always calls him only Antonio. We didn't know the names or everything else, but it's an Antonio married to Parapina. So the marriage of Antonio and Parapina, we know immediately it's Antonio Haoa and Parapina Araki. So, Antonio Haoa is there again, and Nicolás Teao Epe, and Bartolomé Rangitaki. Rangitaki is not really a Rapa Nui name. Bartolomé Rangitaki arrived here to Rapa Nui in 1888 with his sister, Elizabeth Rangitaki Teuatau. They were both from Fangatau in the Tuamotu Islands. So they arrived together, both married someone from the island, a Rapa Nui person, and ended up having descendants. Bartolome, unfortunately, only had one son who died very young, but Elizabeth had 10 children, and that's the Pacarati family, so my family. So that's Bartolome's sister. He was called Mahanga. Here he is again. Here he is measuring Harepaenga at the base of Poike, so that should be the area of Mahatua, a very well-known area where there were some literate people living there. You see the horses, and that's the main means of transportation back then. Carlos Teao Tori, this was a very famous rock. Joanne van Tilburg wrote an article about this one. The Orongo doorpost, or the carved doorpost, Orongo carved doorpost or something, from the ceremonial village of Orongo. Carlos Teao, another member of this expedition, very well known. This is the boy. So Routledge only talked about the boy in her writings and field notes, but with his face, we know it's Moises Tuki Kaituoe, also the father of the Tuki Hereveri family, so another very important family of the island, who lived, many years, 86 years, again with a doorpost, with some bleach or some paint, white paint, to be able to tell a little bit better the features. We will jump then. So very quick jump to the Franco-Belgian expedition, 1934-35. Of course, we have here the nexus. So what we said before, Juan Tepano worked with Routledge. 20 years later, he is again working with the Franco-Belgian expedition and being an elder now. So he was much younger at the time of Routledge and learning a lot, but now he was the elder that had most of the knowledge. Well, that's what everyone told Métraux and Lavacherie. But there were other people that worked at that time, like here, Nicolás Pacomio, close to the face, Vallajeva sculpture, sculpted face in the rock. Sitting up there is Nicolás Pacomio Angata. And here we have his son, Rui Manu, Juan Luis Pacomio Angata, next to Lavacherie in his horse. Here we have some more pictures. This is in Vinapu in January of 1935. Domingo Paté next to Captain Van de Sande from the Belgian ship. Metro worked with, and Lavashiri both worked with lots of Rapa Nui women as well as collaborators and so-called informants. This is Victoria Rapahango, and this is Matarena Haoa with some petroglyphs using some chalk to paint them. And then we jump again 20 more years to the Norwegian archaeological expedition, 56 and so on. Then we have Nicolas Pacomio again. Nicolas Pacomio is the nexus with the previous generation. And Jose Paté Pacomio on the left side, also with some things that were uncovered. Lots of names here of after the excavations: Farenet Pacomio, Eugenio Juque, Santiago Tepano, Juan Haoa, Casimiro Paua, Benedicto Riroroko. All people that worked during the excavations here with Thor Heyerdahl, but never remembered and never named in the pictures that were taken of them. Well, massive pictures, and well, we've been able to identify everybody in these pictures now. Of course, I'm not going to read all of those names. This is the excavation of Moai Matamea near Tahai. Again, here's another group excavating in Anaquena. Pedro Atan Pacomio is looking down in the picture, like in the center, next to his sister Mariana Atan Pacomio, and lots of people. And Thor Heyerdahl can be seen there as well in the center of the photograph. Some people working in Vanoraraku, the youngest guy, like in the center, a very young man, Alberto Herberi, passed away this year. But back then, well, of course, he was only 18 years old in 1955. And Bill Malloy's Akiva restoration, just finishing with this. This was a picture that we wanted to identify. This is 1960, so it's easier to talk to people who met them and knew them. And we did this very easily through Facebook. So using a Facebook post and working with two people from that time, Corina Tepano Tuki and Francisco Riroroko Atam. Thank you to both of them if they see this one day. We were able to identify the 16 people that appear in the picture, just like that, and share that result with everybody in the Rapa Nui community connected to Facebook. So yeah, I know that I was a little bit short of time, but thank you for listening, and well, looking forward to any questions you might have.